Hi everyone, welcome to the first ever YouTube edition of Spice vs. Spice, a series where I eat spicy food and review a spicy book and I let you know which one I think is spicier. Representing the food team today, we have the entire 23rd season of the Hot One hot sauces, accompanied with some wings. And representing the book team today, we have The Dare by Harley Laroux. It is a novella that precedes The Loser's Duet, so this video is actually the first of 3 videos to cover this entire series. And since we have 10 flavors of hot sauce today, I'm actually going to do something different and tell you where I think the book falls on this Scoville scale. So maybe it didn't even make the chart, maybe it's somewhere here, or maybe it's so spicy that it's even beyond the last dab. Now before we get in, please take a moment to look at the content warning, which I will have here on the screen. It is quite an extensive list, and I always stress that you know yourself, your lived experiences, and what you need best. Please protect your space, take breaks, or even exit out as necessary. The author mentioned that they poured a lot of hurt, anger, and trauma into the story, and while I definitely did see that, I also saw that they put a lot of care into the story. I'd also like us to put care into the space that we're choosing to share with one another. Please also expect all types of spoilers because I will be fully exploring the spice in this book and what I think about them. That being said, let's get into it. So The Dare. We're introduced to Jessica Martin. Jessica and her friend decides to hit up a house party that someone from their high school is putting on. This is maybe a year post-graduation and Jessica's currently in college, but she's back to party with her high school friends for Halloween weekend. And among her high school class, Jessica is very popular. And when I say popular, I very much mean your stereotypical blonde hair, beautiful cheer captain dating the quarterback type of popular. You either wanted to be her or you wanted to be with her. And with all of that popularity and status, Jessica was also a massive bully. Alright, let's enjoy our first wing. This is the original buffalo hot sauce. Really good, but there's like no heat. Okay, so Jessica rolls up to this party with her best friend wearing an angel costume, and while driving up to the gate, she looked into her rearview mirror and she saw a very familiar truck, and she turned to her best friend and she blurted out, "Manson Reed is behind us." And her best friend was like, "Manson Reed, are you sure? Who would invite him? You don't think he'd actually be invited? That guy's a freak. He and his friends have always freaked me out." But also, Jessica, if I'm remembering correctly, didn't you and Manson have something back in high school? And so we're brought back to high school, and let me set the scene. Manson was a victim of Jessica and her friend group's bullying. He was the perfect victim, as she would describe. He was quiet, always had his head down, didn't really bother other people, and so it made him the perfect target to be picked on. He ran with the skater kids, the goth crowd, the anime kids, and he never really hung out with any of the popular kids, and so he was very much at the bottom of the social hierarchy in high school. Manson was actually a punching bag for Jessica's high school boyfriend and his friends, and Jessica herself insulted him any chance she had in high school, and he would say stuff back at her. Ultimately, she was still at the top of the social hierarchy and he wasn't, until one day, just days after Jessica and her high school boyfriend Kyle at the time had broken up. Jessica decided that she was going to pull Manson into the girls' bathroom and make out with him, and he did kiss her back, and she said her goal was to make Kyle jealous, and it worked. Kyle found out from Jessica herself, and when he heard about it, he was extremely angry and he was going to take it out on Manson. So he and his friend group decided to corner Manson in the guys' bathroom. Now, Jessica had warned Manson beforehand to not come to school, but Manson was like, "Dude, I'm sick of you guys' BS. I'm not gonna hide anymore. I'm gonna show up to school." So when Kyle and his friend cornered Manson in the bathroom and was beating him up, Manson pulls out a knife. He didn't hurt anyone, but the administration got involved, and of course he was the one to get expelled, even though he was also the one covered in bruises and a busted lip. And that was the last of Jessica and Manson's high school relationship. She'd graduated, moved on to bigger and better things, and she'd actually also broken up with her high school boyfriend. And so now she runs into Manson at this party, and with all that history, she's just trying to avoid him while also having fun with her friend. Alright, let's try our second wing. This is the Smoky J. It makes your wing kind of green. It's kind of gross looking, but it's like kind of sweet. Good wing, not really heating. And so she's at this party having fun, and she had the chance to jump into a beer pong game with her best friend, and they won and kept the table. And so her best friend is like, who's next? You know, we can take you. And Manson steps up and says, I want to play, but just me and her, referring to him and Jess. And Jess is not one to back out of a challenge, keep that in mind for later. And so Manson stepped up to the table, he took a Sharpie, wrote dare on a few of the beer pong cups, and he said, let's do drink or dare. When your opponent gets a ball into your dare cup, you have the chance to do a dare and keep your cup, or you can just drink up and lose their cup. And Jessica's like, fine, let's do it. I'm not scared of you. And the whole time they're playing, they're just antagonizing each other. She lands a dare cup and dared him to shove his head into a toilet and flush it because you're used to that, aren't you? But then the ball lands into her dare cup and he dares her to get on her knees and kiss his boots for 60 seconds. And the crowd around them is cheering, and Miss Popular does not back out of a challenge. I think it's partly because she knows that even subjecting herself to something so humiliating, she'll still be the top of the food chain. People are just gonna find her hot. Alright, let's have another wing. This one is funky, Stella Fuzz. It's a bit spicier than the other two, but like not by much. This one's really good. So she gets down onto her knees in front of him, and in her head she's thinking, this dude is trying to get me back for high school. And she leans her head down to his feet and she made sure her peaches were up, teasing the crowd a little bit, and it worked. Everybody was cheering, and she started kissing his boots one after the other, leaving lip gloss marks everywhere. And surprisingly to herself, while she was doing that, somewhere down under, her wing flats were getting sauced up, a little drenched in some hot sauce, and she's like, what in the world? And I'm like, Miss Jessica Martin, I think you just learned something about yourself. And so she's kissing up all over his shoes, and logically she knew that she was supposed to hate it, but for some darn reason all she could think about is what it would feel like if he had his boot on her face and called her for liking it. So 60 seconds passed and they're back to beer ponging. She dared him to raw shot an egg and he did it. He dared her to give him her thong, and so she took it off and tossed it to him. But remember how earlier when she was kissing his boots, she was getting a little bit sauced up down there? And so he caught the panties, felt the hot sauce, and pocketed it while staring straight at her. And you know what went through her head? She was afraid that she was gonna start dripping hot sauce down her legs because she didn't have her panties on. Yeah, that was her biggest fear. And then he dared her to down a cup with her panties in it, and she passed. Then when she landed a dare cup, she had more things she wanted him to do, but instead she was willing to waste it to get her panties back. So she was like, I dare you to give me my panties back, right? She was thinking to herself, like, this is too easy of a dare, but it's fine, let me just have my panties back. And I agree, of all the dares so far, this is probably the easiest dare, but he drank the darn cup instead of giving her panties back. Okay, let's have another wing. De Los Calientes Verde. I've actually had this one, so. And I really like the flavors. So they kept playing back and forth, and then they were down to 1-1. He took a shot and he caught it. And so she had a chance of a rebuttal shot, and so she took it and she missed. She was about to walk away, but then he was like, hey, you still have a dare cup. And so she looked at it and was like, okay, what do you want me to do? And he says, I'll give you another chance to rebuttal. If you make it in, you win, no questions asked. And my dare is that you have to be my slave for the rest of the night. And the crowd hyped her on. And as she was taking aim for that shot, she can just feel it in her gut that she was gonna miss. But she took it anyways, and she did in fact miss. Everyone cheered, but quickly moved on to the next round of beer pong, and Jessica and Manson both step out. She walks up to him, and he was like, are you actually going to do this? She goes, yeah, you dare me. But he actually thought that she was just gonna walk away. Even her best friend was like, dude, let's just bail. Like, no one expects you to follow through on this weird dare. But Jessica herself was like, no, it's fine. And then her friend was like, wait, hold up. Are you into this? Like, I mean, I think it's kind of freaky, but like, if you want it, I'm not gonna chicken block you. And Jessica goes, I think I can handle myself. And so her best friend took the hint and left. So she goes with Manson, and he was like, all right, if you're down for it. And he makes her do a few humiliating things, like tying his shoes, calling him master, and crawling into the kitchen to get him a beer. She was a total brat, talked back, and made it very difficult the entire time, but ultimately she still in some sense obeyed. She actually wanted to keep pushing him so that he would react. Being her bratty self, she got herself in some trouble that warranted some punishment in the theater room somewhere in the house. And Jessica is learning a lot about herself, and we're also learning a lot about Jessica. And it seems like throughout all of this and moving forward, Jessica really wants to eat the wings, but she wants the illusion that she doesn't want to eat the wings and is forced to eat the wings. Alright, wing number 5 is the Kisso sin Kisso. This one's packing some heat. And so in the private room, he had her on her knees, kissing his boots again. And while she's down there doing that, her down there was getting sauced up again. And then she felt something hard pressed against her head, keeping her down. And she recognized it as the sole of his other shoe. Yep, she was kissing his boot while he has the other boot on her head. He had her use her tongue to lick up his boot. Then he took a sip of beer and then spat it into her mouth. Then he moves her onto his lap. And then he leans into her ear and he says, "Do you understand what a safe word is?" And she goes, "Yeah, yours is red. Say it and everything stops." Now bend over, head on the ground. And her thighs were around him and he proceeded to smack them peaches. And she screamed and was like, "Manson, please don't." And he stopped and says, "If you really don't want this, I promise you're safe to say so." And for the first time that night, she had to honestly admit to him, "I want this, I'll use my safe word if I need to." And then he smacked them peaches so hard I thought he was trying to make jam. And he pressed his boots into her head again while doing that. And I'm thinking, like, listen, I know she was a massive bully back then, but like, is this necessary? Girl, stand up. But also she was really into it, and I guess I support women pursuing their dreams, so it was extremely intense for a couple of minutes, seems really painful, and she was an absolute mess. He finally pulled her back up, held her against his chest, and softly asked, "Are you okay, Jess?" And she responded, "I can't believe you actually." And he goes, "I can't believe you let me." And then they just shared the softest moments, which put me on my knees. It's always these little soft moments that have me in a chokehold. Okay, wing number 6, this is the Bourbon Maple Reaper. Now coming out of their soft moment, she's like, "Can you please drumstick me down?" And he was like, "On my terms, not yours. But I will make sure that you're screaming from the spice pain. Of course. You're not finishing your wings until I let you." So back to the party they go, they socialize, kind of hung out around a bit, and then she spots 3 clowns, like a literal jester costume clown. But even with the clown makeup and all, she recognized them all immediately because they were all some of her victims. All friends of Manson's. Their names are Lucas, Vincent, and Jason. I can go ahead and tell you now that her bullying dynamic with each one of them was different, but we're not going to see that explored in this book. You're going to have to wait till the next video or book 2. So she sees these clowns and she's like, "Oh heck no, let's bounce." But Manson saw them and he walked straight over to them and was like, "Hey, you guys made it." They all take some jabs at her and Manson was like, "Chill, she's with me tonight." And they all looked a little bit surprised. Jason was like, "Oh, so you're not going to share?" And again, surprisingly, that went straight to her wing flap. Okay, she was getting saucy again. They go back and forth and she basically looked at Manson and was like, "If you're not going to drumstick me, I gotta go pee." And so she heads to the bathroom, but she actually is not there to pee. She is there to play with her own flap. She's been wanting to eat this wing so bad, and so she's thinking about what happened between her and Manson earlier in the little home theater, and she's, you know, getting herself to enjoy this flap. But suddenly she heard a banging at the door and she was like, "Wait, hold on just a minute." And you know, she's just trying to finish her wing quickly, but the banging at the door is not stopping, and so she's like, "I can't finish my wings like this." And so she opens the door, and then Manson pushes in and closes the door behind him and locks it. And he grabs her hand and he could see hot sauce all over her finger, and he's like, "Not you sneaking off to eat wings by yourself, that's not what we agreed on." And she says, "So you caught me, are you gonna hurt me?" And he goes, "More than you can imagine. Do you remember your safe word?" "Yes, I do. If I cross the line, you better darn well use it. Do you understand?" "Yes, I do." And he proceeded to give her another lesson with her panties in her mouth, face to the wall, legs open, bent over. He had her rub up on her wing flash since she wanted to eat them so badly, but he did not let her finish her wing. And he proceeded to lick her fingers of the hot sauce. Then his gaze flicked over to her lips, a silent question, a command he did not dare to give, which I thought was very interesting because he has been giving commands after commands the entire night, but this was too intimate. It's funny to see where people draw the line. And so she gave the demand instead and said, "Do it, kiss me." Alright, now we have wing 7. This is the forbidden fruit. That sounds kind of scary, but manageable, but it definitely builds. And then it was lips on lips, but also skin on skin. Her nails were digging into his skin with full intentions to break that barrier into his body. They were lip biting, drawing blood, and tasting iron. And interestingly enough, even though this was just a kiss, I think the physicality of it makes this one of their spiciest scenes. It's an embodiment of the desires, right? Not just from this night, but most likely years in the making. And when they finally pulled apart, he said, "You made me bleed." And she scornfully said, "And you didn't." And he laughed and said, "Was that what you wanted?" And to that she actually said, "I want to slap you." And he gave her a go ahead, and she went and smacked him across the face, just really pouring out her anger and confusion about herself and what she's feeling into the slap. Again, I really like this physical representation of what's going on inside of her head. And then they leave the bathroom and he leads her into a bedroom, which comes to find out is actually his bedroom because he'd been taken in by the family of the guy who threw the party. And so here we learn that the mom of the house was actually his social worker for years, and when he turned 18 and had nowhere to go because his home was very unsafe, she decided to take him in. And this was when Jessica had a realization about the bruises that Manson used to carry around. She had assumed they were from being bullied at school, which doesn't make it better, but she had no idea about his home life. And so she tried to apologize, but he was like, "I don't want to talk about it, maybe someday, but not today." And I can go ahead and tell you now that a lot of his trauma does get explored in the Losers Duet, so the next books. And so to that Jessica said, "Yeah, someday." And Manson responded with the softest expression, saying, "Someday? You mean I'm not scaring you away?" And then she goes, "You're scaring me, but I like being scared." So he said, "Jessica, dude, I think you ran with the wrong crowd in high school. You fit right in with the freaks." It honestly was such a cute moment between the two of them until he said, "Jessica, you say that you're scared of my friends, but I see the way you look at them." And then from the darkness, she sees several bodies emerge. "Miss us, Jess?" And then she saw 3 freaking clowns. Alright, now we have wing number 8, the bomb evolution, which is different from the bomb beyond insanity. I believe that they use similar ingredients, but they use natural ingredients as opposed to extracts that is used in the bomb beyond insanity. So I hear that it should be very similar, but a lot of the Reddit posts I've read said that they're slightly different. This one is less spicy. So this is always the one that gets people on the show, but maybe with the modification, it's not that bad. I don't know. Oh, I see what they mean by it's not enjoyable. There's like no other flavor. Ooh. It's going straight to my ears. Okay, I need a second. So the bomb was also dropped in Jessica when she realized that these 3 clowns are about to join her lineup of spice for the night. The way I would have cried, the way I am with this wing if I was her. But even though she wasn't crying, she was for sure really scared. She clung onto Mason's shirt, to which he says, "Oh, you think I wouldn't share?" The fire out of my mouth, but also that fire out of Manson's mouth, sir. Keep your mouth shut. So then all the clowns took turn taunting her, like, "Oh, look who's scared now. Oh, how does it feel to be scared of us?" Like, truly, Jessica, how they turn tables. And at this point, I was honestly holding my breath because this could... the way I can't speak because of how spicy it is. Okay. And at this point, I was honestly holding my breath because this could take a very bad turn. But then I was also trusting the writing, right? I was like, they've been so careful with how it's been portrayed so far. Like, I'm trusting the writing. I'm trusting the author. And so Manson turns and whispers to Jessica, "Do you want to leave or do you want to face your fear?" And I really do think this was his way of checking in on her and giving her a way out. And for that, she answered, "You're evil." And I like that. Like I said, Miss Popular does not back down from a challenge. And to that, he smiled at her, but then he also told her directly that if at any point she has any doubt on her mind, they all know the safe word. And he also said he wouldn't let anyone touch her if he didn't already know that they would respect it if she wanted the game to stop. And so he had her crawl over and enjoy their chicken wings in her mouth. And with her mouth occupied, she was to tap their legs 3 times to call red. And as commanded, she enjoyed all 3 drums, one after the other, and then she also drank up 3 different flavors of hot sauce, one after the other, like a champ. And if you think I'm glossing over this scene a little bit too quickly, it's honestly because the most memorable part of the scene to me was the shock factor of her consuming 3 wings back to back. The boys all said very daring things. Lucas had a pierced wing, and Vincent was playing around with some cuffs because he likes restraints. And Jessica was still not allowed to eat her own flat, okay? She could only eat the 3 drums. I think for the limited information we had on the boys, the spice was honestly solid. But outside of the adventurous nature of the scene, I honestly wasn't very emotionally invested in these 3 clown characters at this point. And granted, after reading the losers duets, I adore these boys, okay? I love each and every one of them with my whole heart. However, at this point in time, I could not even remember their names. It was just Jessica and Manson for me. I knew they were victims of her bullying, so the flip play of power was interesting, but other than that, I think spices hit stronger for me when there's that psychological component. Alright, wing number 9. It's kind of bitter. Spicy. There's still seeds in this. Oh. It tastes like biting a chili directly. Ooh, I do not like that. I don't know about this one. This one also does not taste good. It just hurts. The switch from here to here was really significant. This is kind of on par, but this is spicier. Especially if you bite into a seed, oh my goodness. So once she finishes those 3 wings, they leave Jess and Manson to their privacy. And this is where the spice picks up for multiple reasons. Oh my god. Okay, so the spice picks up for a multitude of reasons. 1, the physical acts themselves were very spicy. But 2, the scenes were being used for them to work through some of their history. Let me explain. Oh my goodness. Sorry, I had to go get tissues. So he checked in again to make sure that she remembers her safe word. And I really like that that's something he kept up to the very end. And then he pulls out a butterfly knife for some knife play. He told her back in high school when I pulled a knife on those guys, I didn't hurt them. I never went to hurt people. Not like that. And then they also played with some restraints, some handcuffs, and then there was a lot of denial of her wanting to finish her wings. Like she really wanted to finish those darn wings and he would not let her. And she was practically sobbing. And he goes, I'd never imagined I'd hear you begging the freak. I guess you'd always wanted my attention, but you did it the only way you knew how, by being a bully. And so she's pushed to apologizing and sobbing and begging for a chance to finish her wings, but also maybe apologizing for everything else that's happened too, but kind of in the mix. And then he dropped hot wax onto her skin and more plays that continuously put her on the edge without letting her finish those darn wings. She pushes back at points, which only led to more punishment and him calling her spoiled. There was this very intense good girl, bad girl component and this need for her to give up control and obey. And this intensity just felt like a redemption arc. And then he wanted to slap her flat, okay? And she was like, I'm not sure I can handle that. And he goes, okay, if that's a hard limit for you, I won't do it. And then she thought about it and her curiosity got the best of her and she was like, you know, go for it. And he goes, okay, if at any point you change your mind, it does not matter when, just call red. And then she'd recognized that she'd given him his vengeance on a silver platter, which made the humiliation even deeper. And so curiosity did kill her cat, or whatever the saying is, because he smacked that kitty to the point of tears. And he finally stopped and was like, are you okay, Jess? To which she said, yeah, I'm okay. And then he said, I think you've been punished enough. And so then he finally ate her wing flat for her so that she could finish, because she's been holding on to this flat for so long that she just wanted to let it go. And then he took the handle of the knife and he used that to help her finish her wing a second time. And my girl was leaking a pool of hot sauce. Alright, the last dab. Whoopsie. It doesn't look that liquidy on the show. Oh, I was supposed to shake it, huh? It's like burning my fingers. So then for their last dab, we finally get a reunion of the drum and the flats. They went at it, and then with her permission, he transferred his hot sauce over to her wing, all up inside of it. It was incredible for everyone. Except for me. It was incredible for everyone except for me. He helped her cleans up all that hot sauce and everything, because, you know, it'd be getting real spicy. And so she's just laying there pondering, and in her head, she's contrasting this picture-perfect version of herself that she's painted for so long to the events that just transpired over the past few hours. And she's like, dang, that doesn't even sound like the same person. And then he asked her quite hesitantly, was this good for you? And I find this hesitation and question for affirmation so different than the sheer confidence he's been emitting the entire night. And suddenly he's asking for her approval, and to that she said, if my screaming didn't convince you, sir. And they spend the rest of the night in bed, and he sends her off the next morning with her best friend, who was extremely hungover. And it seems like there was a plan to meet again, you know, maybe breakfast next weekend, according to Jessica Martin herself. She goes, bye loser, and he says, Jess. And she goes, sorry, punish me next time, master. So there seems to be this promise that their relationship will continue, right? Except next time doesn't happen for another 3 years. In the beginning of the next book, we learned that once Jessica was back into her world, she was no longer able to keep the promises she'd made the night before and that morning. He'd actually texted her about breakfast next weekend, to which she ghosted him. It was fun for her, but she had a picture-perfect life to get back into. She wasn't ready to risk it all, not for another 3 years, and we'll be exploring that in the next book or the next video. Now let's talk a little bit more about the spice. I think the very intentional pairing of a bully romance with a humiliation clink to sort of flip that script worked really well. Now, I don't tend to read bully or humiliation, but I think it worked really well for them. This does go on to be a poly romance in the losers duet, but this book I think was very much Jessica and Manson. Again, I think that group scene adds more of a shock element to this book more than anything, but ultimately it was a tease, right? We don't really get to explore that until the next couple of books. For Manson and Jessica, why he frames his scene as punishment, I don't believe that at any point his intentions were that of vengeance. But yeah, overall I really like them, and I like that they play safe. And as for where I rank the spice, I'd say probably right here. It definitely hit, but not like breathing fire. Maybe for Jessica.